Three. In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, it is the final region, the Midwest region. We had to wait until the Texas Xavier game was finished so we can know the matchup. But I have Krysten Peek on. She's going to share her thoughts on the top prospects in the Midwest and which players she thinks could really improve their draft stock with a strong tournament. Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I am your host, Rafael Barlowe, along with my co-host, Krysten Peek. And this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use the code Locked On NBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That is Prize Picks. Run your game. And if you're not subscribed to the NBA Big Board YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment, click the bell so you can be notified every time we drop an episode, because we are your daily source for NBA draft content. And if you are a fan of an NBA team, check out the Locked On newsletter at lockedondaily.com. It is your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox every single day. All right, the field of 64 is set. We are recording. It is 11:18 p.m. Central Time. And we are recording because we had to wait until we found out the last team to get in. And this is Krysten's first NCAA tournament with Locked On. Tell me about just your overall NCAA tournament experience. Like, are you like the person that's up all day, like stressed out over your bracket? I know you have personal relationships with a lot of these kids. Are you rooting for the kids opposed to the team? Like, what goes on in the world of Krysten Peek on?
I've been so immersed into it so many years, where I've had so many different responsibilities, whether that's like a live pick'em show or, like in the last 10 years, I've had to, present myself in terms of my upsets and, the big bust in the regions or whatever. And so for this year, I am just relaxed. I'm cool. I'm calm. Like, I'm more exactly what you said, Rafael. Like, I'm watching the prospects. So when we look at this Midwest region, I'm more zoned in on the players and the players that are going to be drafted in June or that are going to be picked up by, an NBA team. I'm more watching that. I don't necessarily have like a horse in the race where I'm like, oh my gosh, Houston, St. John's, Auburn, Duke with no Cooper Flagg, like they're going to run the show. I'm more just like, okay, what is Asa Newell going to do? Like, if we're looking at this region. So that's more my bread and butter for this tournament for this year.
A lot less stressful. I haven't even done a bracket yet. I mean, I may do one tonight if I can still do one.
Come on, dude. You got to do a bracket.
It's crazy because I've spent so much time watching the individual players.
I know. Yes.
That the teams, I'm like, I don't know.
Well, and I will say this. I feel like you and I have probably over scouted these teams. And so when the tournament hits, we're like, oh my God, is Auburn really going to make it? Like, is Alabama and their 4-guard offense, like, are they really going to make, like, is the SEC really going to run through this tournament? Like, you don't know, because you and I have watched so much basketball, so I don't know.
I'm worried about that there's a possibility that we could end up outside of Duke. If Duke doesn't make it, we could end up with the Final Four that has 0 first-round picks or 0 lottery picks.
Right.
I know with my top 5 on my big board, you have Dylan and Ace at home.
Out. Yep.
Trey Johnson at home.
Yep.
VJ is either going to, he has a strong matchup, a tough matchup in the first round against Mississippi State. If they win that, they play Duke. And if Duke wins, I mean, it just leaves pretty much, all my top 5 outside of Cooper Flagg wiped out. But anyway, let's talk about the Midwest region. Who is your number 1 prospect in the Midwest region?
So my number 1 prospect, I mean, we're looking at this rundown right here. Kasparas Jakucionis, he has been so consistent for Illinois. I think Illinois is going to be the team that kind of makes a little bit of noise in this region between him and Will Riley. But Asa Newell at Georgia, he was part of that Montverde team that won a national championship, won a national title last year. And you see all these posts and these memes saying, oh, if Montverde was in this tournament, how far would they go with Asa, Derik Queen, Cooper Flagg, Rob Wright, Liam McNeeley. And so I'm excited to see Asa in this sort of situation, but when we're looking at a team that is going to progress, I think Illinois has a very strong point, and where they're going to draw. And so when we're looking at Kasparas and Will Riley, I think those are 2 that we're going to be able to see multiple times, within the tournament when things start.
It's crazy because I was literally going to ask you, since you've been following these guys for a while, where would Montverde, that last year team, where would they be seated in this tournament?
I like at least a 3 seed, I think. We're what do you think? I mean, it's insane to me. And then when we see where Montverde is going to now, with the coach leaving to go to Spire Academy and that entire program just kind of dissolving, into nothing. It's interesting to me to wonder if you kept that core group of 6 or 7 players together, where they would be seated in the tournament.
Yeah. If Illinois wins, I mean, they have a tough matchup against Xavier. They'd be expected to play Kentucky. All right. Asa Newell, in his last game, he had a monster performance, 21 points, 17 rebounds. What do you think he needs to show to improve his draft stock? I mean, I think it's safe to say that he's a lottery pick. Where, I don't know, but do you think a strong tournament could push him inside the top 7 or top 5, or is there something that he would need to show teams?
I think he's definitely a top 10. Like you said, he's solidified himself in terms of a lottery pick, but what he needs to do to show NBA teams, I don't necessarily think he can do it in the NCAA tournament. I think they already have a good body of work of what he projects at the NBA level. And they're going to be able to get him in workouts, and we're going to see him at the combine and see how he projects. But, in terms of what he can do and the work he can do in the NCAA tournament, Georgia, as he goes, they go, you know what I mean? So it's more showing NBA teams, I'm a winner. I can come into a program at Georgia and win at the highest level when things are on the table, when I have to have the team on my back. And I think that's his biggest thing. That's his biggest hurdle that for Asa. We all know what he projects in terms of a inside out 4, a rim protector, his versatility, his upside as an NBA big. And so we already know that, but it's okay, what can you do when the game is on the line and the team needs you and you can win? And so I think that's honestly what NBA teams are looking at.
All right, I have a question for you. It's going to put you on the spot.
Go on.
And I've asked NBA scouts this question, agents this question. What is the difference between Asa Newell and Marvin Bagley?
You've totally asked me this question. And yes, you
definitely online, or was it on
No. It was through a text, and that's fair. And I think Asa is a better shooter. I think the game has changed in the sense where Asa has adapted to the modern NBA game a little bit better than Marvin has. And, it's a fair comp for you and for other NBA teams to say what's the difference between Asa and Marvin? But Marvin was the number 2 draft pick. So
rightfully so. Like,
yes.
I forgot the numbers that he put up. He averaged like 21 and 11 as a freshman.
Yeah. Yeah. And Marvin was ridiculous at Duke. So if you are if NBA teams are like throwing that comp out as like a negative, then what are we doing here? That just shows like the depth of this NBA draft class in terms of the talent at the top. And if we're talking about Asa, how does he fit into that? But I think he is way more versatile. I think he's a better shooter than Marvin Bagley. So,
but Bagley shot 39% from 3. It was
you're right. You're right. Me and everyone else probably forgets that. That's very, very fair. Yes.
61% from the floor. And the reason I brought up the comparison is because they're both, to me, like this hybrid 4-5. Do they block shots enough to play the 5? Did they shoot it well enough to play the 4? And it's a question that I've asked multiple people. The answers are similar, but at the same time, a little different. And, it's just odd to me why, Bagley's getting D&Ps on his, his 4th team. So,
well, he's been hurt. He's hurt.
He's healthy now. It's just, I don't know, man. Basketball season is heating up, and there is no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, which is the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, all you have to do is just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections for shots you win up to 1,000 times your cash. It is easy to use. It is available in over 30 states, and it lets you mix and match projections across different sports. And Prize Picks makes it simple. You can set your lineup in less than 60 seconds, and you can stay engaged all game long. And when you win, your money hits your account in as little as 15 minutes. So there is no waiting around. And every Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25%, giving even more value to your lineup. So download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, I've had this ongoing problem. I just really don't have the time. Between work, life, and trying to eat healthier, I am constantly feeling stressed out. I'd go to the grocery store, buy things that I don't need, and then end up with no time to actually cook. And sticking to my health goals, an absolute struggle. But everything changed when I discovered Hungry Root. Honestly, it is a game changer. It is the easiest way to eat healthy without all of the stress. And with Hungry Root, it's like you have your own personal shopper and nutritionist all in one. They take care of your grocery shopping. They recommend meals that fit your tastes and your health goals, from everything from anti-inflammatory to high protein and gluten-free options. And the best part is that every meal is ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm talking quick, healthy meals that actually taste good, all delivered straight to your door. It is a huge time saver and can make eating healthy so much simpler. You're going to absolutely love Hungry Root. For a limited time, you get 40% off your first box and a free item in every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/lockedonnba. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's hungryroot.com/lockedonnba, LOCKEDONNBA, to get $40 off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. Again, hungryroot.com/lockedonnba. Do not miss out. All right, let's talk about Kasparas Jakucionis. You mentioned him. Where do you see him as far as like your point guards in this class? Obviously, Dylan Harper is in a class of his own, but in that mix between Jakucionis, Fears, Yegor Dimon, where do you see him in that mix?
I see him as a top 10 player. He's going to be one of those players, where teams go back, where they watch his film and particularly in the tournament and how his production is in postseason and, in the tournament or whatever. And they're going to make a decision. And, you know, when we're looking at Dylan Harper, of course, he is number 2 after Cooper Flagg, right? And with Jakucionis, it's like, okay, where is he with Fears, with the other point guards, with Yegor Demon? I think he is second tier, but he has to show more initiative, I think, and more aggression in terms of like against tougher competition and when the games are on the line. And I think the tournament is the exact sort of situation where teams are going to be looking for that. Do you know what I mean? And so do I think his draft stock is going to fall at all because of the tournament? No. But do I think because of what he does in the next couple games, hopefully for Illinois, will that help him and solidify, you know, different teams and their decision making, and him being like a 6, 7, 8, 9 draft pick? Absolutely.
I think his spot is safe. I think he's a top 10 pick for sure.
Yeah.
But his teammate Will Riley, I think he has a chance to really rise.
Will Riley has a lot. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like he is the one that, and anytime we look at the NCAA tournament, we look at teams that, you know, players that can like help themselves the most. I think Will Riley and his production and what he can do in March will definitely see him either climb up draft boards or just kind of like stay in that mid first round range.
Yep, I agree. I think a strong tournament for him could definitely boost his draft stock. He has the positional size, the upside as a shooter, underrated passer. I think that he could definitely help himself. Speaking of helping themselves, let's talk about Milos Uzan. You got a chance to see him in person a few times, right?
Yes. Milos, let me tell you something about Milos. So as a high school prospect, like I had a chance to interview him and talk to him. And when he went to Oklahoma, you know, he was a little soft. He'll tell you that. He was so soft. Even in his first few games when he transferred to Houston. So soft. Now that he's like kind of gotten under the belt of Kelvin Sampson and the coaching staff and been able to develop and get the confidence a little bit more, you've seen him kind of become a dog. And even in, you know, like the Big 12 tournament, we saw it, and he was so aggressive. And I cannot even believe I'm saying this about Milos because, you know, he was more like a finesse player, a finesse finisher. And now we're seeing him more as the aggressor. And defensively, he has been incredible. And that is what like you have players that go to Houston and that's what they hope to become. I'm sorry, like Quentin Grimes, when he transferred from Kansas and he went to Houston, he became a tougher player. He became that first round draft pick. And I'm not saying Milos Uzan is a first round draft pick, but he has become that dog. He has become that Houston guard that Calvin Sampson covets and loves.
I wonder what are they feeding those guys down there? Like,
right.
It's amazing. Like I had a conversation. It was about Yegor Demon, right? And I had mentioned, you know what? He wasn't aggressive. Like he was scared of Houston. He just looked like, you know, he just wasn't ready for that level of physicality. And it just raised some questions I had about him as an NBA prospect. And the person told me, well, there's not a team in the NBA that's going to defend like Houston. So it's hard to judge guys against their performance or on their performance against Houston because they defend like crazy. And no matter who it is, plug and play. You play for Kelvin Sampson, it's like there's this battery in your back that just cranks up your motor, your energy, your toughness, and so on. So I think that he's played extremely well. I mean, he had 25 points against Arizona in the championship game. Had a strong
MVP of that game for sure.
Yeah, 25, 4-4. And then he had 2 games where he had 14 points. He's been efficient. And I think he's really helped himself out this year. the biggest jump for me is he shot 42% from three this year after shooting 29% last year. So he's a player that I didn't have in my top 60, but with his size and the toughness and the way that he's played, I think that he could put himself in position to be drafted if he decides to come out. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions, and the privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. And the new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate subject to change. The 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. You must keep the funds in the IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost.
The NCAA Tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA Tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Let's talk about his teammate. Another transfer. He was at Baylor, LJ Cryer. What are your thoughts on LJ Cryer?
I love LJ, and I loved LJ at Baylor. And then when he elected to transfer to Houston, and I was like, oh my God, how are you going to get a tough guard tougher? And like, it was a match made in heaven in terms of like the backcourt duo between Milos and LJ and just, their toughness. And LJ didn't skip a beat. I mean, we see players that transfer and they have an adjustment in terms of like the different offense or, the different pace of what they're doing. And LJ came in right away and was like, no, I'm going to run this team. And, before the Arizona game, when they played BYU, he had 20 points, and he has just been the sounding board for this Houston team and just so tough. He's so tough, averaging 15 points, just very healthy, just on the smaller side. But I don't fault Houston for that, because that's what Kelvin Sampson is known for. Like, he gets these smaller, tough guards to be able to produce at the highest level for him. And that's what LJ's doing this season.
Yeah, from Marcus Sasser to Jamal Shedd, all undersized but tough. And I think for Cryer, it's going to be an uphill battle for him as an NBA prospect due to his size. And
right.
He's not your traditional point guard, doesn't have great assist numbers. However, we're talking about a guy that is a 41% shooter from three over his career. And it's not a small sample size. It is over 140 games and over 870 attempts. So he's certified. And this year he is shooting 42% from three. And he's a guy that can catch fire. And with Houston being a number one seed with their backcourt, I think they should be the favorites to come out. I know that, what was it, a couple of years ago, the Final Four wasn't in Houston and they didn't make it. I thought that was their year. I think this year is just going to depend on Juwan Roberts and how healthy he is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And, watching that Houston team, I mean, it's that Arizona game, you're watching it and it's just like, how many times are we going to bet against Kelvin Sampson and what he can get out and the production that he can get out of his players in March? Like, it is unmatched. It's unmatched. I feel like him, I feel like St. John's is on like this tear where they will run through any brick wall. Do you know what I mean? For Rick
Yeah.
Pitino. And so anytime you have that sort of production during this time in March is unbelievable, I think.
Yep. All right, let's switch to Kentucky. Kentucky's a team that, I mean, it's weird because they have so many guys that I think are fringe NBA prospects. Jackson
They're
Robinson is a
fringe.
guy.
They're fringe because they're so old.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Even then, like I mean, it's just a collection of guys that, I wouldn't be surprised if, whether it's Kobe Brea, whether it's Lamont Butler, whether it's Jackson Robinson, that I wouldn't be surprised if they carve out NBA careers, and I wouldn't be surprised if none of them get drafted. My favorite prospect on the team is Amari Williams. I still think he's underrated. We're talking a big that can pass and can handle a little bit, and he's been productive. I like him. I think a strong tournament for him could help him out. But what are your thoughts on Amari?
I mean, Amari, like you said, he's on the older spectrum. He's a senior, originally from England, and has just kind of like been a slow burn for a lot of people. He's just kind of taken his time. But this year in particular, we've seen a lot of sets run through him. And that's been a very focal point and a very positive point for Amari as an NBA draft prospect. And so, he's got great positional size at 7 feet. He is a rim protector and someone that has had a lot of good just moments, I think, in the SEC tournament during the season, averaging 11 and 9. I mean, in his last game against Alabama, he had 16, 7, and 4 assists. And anytime that you can put up assist numbers as a big man and show your passing ability, that's always a positive, I think, for any NBA team, because they're looking for, that big when the double comes, then you can make that pass outside of that quick decision-making pass. And he has that, so when we're looking at, upside, we don't know what his upside is because he's a little bit older, but when we know from what we can get from this player specifically, and Amari Williams, is very positive for any NBA team.
Yeah, he's a guy that I think would fit well with a team like the Lakers. I find myself watching Laker games lately, which just causes me to stay up late. But I was just watching a game where they were doubling Luka, and it's like when they double or they trap, if you have a big that you can give the ball to in the middle of the floor, then that allows him, especially if he can make a play,
right?
Whether it's catch the ball and one dribble finish at the rim, or kick it out to the guy in the corner, or maybe even throw the ball to a cutting lob threat. I think having that big that is a passer that can serve as an outlet is really valuable, and I think that is the asset or the attribute that Amari brings. That to me, that's intriguing for NBA teams.
For sure, 100%.
All right, let's talk about Tennessee. Speaking of older prospects, Tennessee has, you talk about a team that's been successful in the transfer portal.
Right.
I was just talking to Richard Stamen earlier. We were talking about guys that are probably going to play in this NCAA tournament that are on like a 15 seed that's going to end up at Tennessee next year. And they got a good one in Chaz Lanier. He was a phenomenal scorer at North Florida last year, goes to Tennessee. And like Amari Williams, the step up in competition in the toughest conference ever.
Yes.
The production was I mean, he was productive.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on Chaz Lanier? He's a player that I think has a defined NBA role as a shooter. We know he's tough. You got to be tough to play for Tennessee. But what does he need to show NBA teams to maybe, help his draft stock?
Chaz Lanier, 5th-year senior. I mean, he's someone that has consistently improved his stat lines over the course of his career, whether that's at North.
Game as a freshman.
That is insane. Yeah. That is insane. And now he's playing at Tennessee. So when you look at, kind of the the make of, you know, what they had with Dalton Connect. And now you're looking at Chaz Lanier. Like, is he the next Dalton Connect? And is he going to be as productive as a pro? I don't know. But like, what he has done at Tennessee has been phenomenal, averaging close to 18 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, has good positional size, 6'4", 6'5", and has just been very, very consistent for this Tennessee team that is staked to go far in the NCAA tournament. Like in a very, very tough SEC play, you know, he was very consistent for them.
40% from 3 on 8 attempts per game. You heard that right. 8 attempts per game.
That is insane.
And last year he shot 44% from 3 on 7.5 attempts per game. That's when he first got on my radar last year. I thought he was a fringe NBA prospect last year, but he transferred up into the toughest conference ever, in my opinion. And,
right.
And the numbers, I mean, they went down a little bit, which you expect, but the shooting is still there. And so I think for him, if he can lead the Volunteers on a deep tournament run, I think he can probably, I wouldn't say change the narrative around him. Teams and scouts know what he's capable of, but I think it can help him, because I feel like when you're an older prospect, even though you may have 100+ games of film, I think sometimes you need a strong tournament for
absolutely, yeah,
scouts to feel like, okay, this guy can help us right away, as opposed to an 18 or 19-year-old who may need some time, especially if you're like a team that's like a playoff team and you don't have time to develop young guys, and you may need somebody to plug and play that has like a skill set that they can hang their hat on. And that pretty much describes Chaz Lanier.
It's crazy to me, Rafael, that like Tennessee now has this like stigma where they're like, oh, we found someone, because Dalton Connect was last year, Chaz Lanier this year. And so you're getting that sort of reputation with NBA scouts. It's like, no, we have someone. We have this guy. We have this person. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so anytime that you can go 2 years in a row and you can get a dude, then NBA scouts are going to trust you later on down the road and be like, okay, Tennessee has this person, this person, this person. Let's have a look. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree 100%. All right. Do you have a Final Four prediction?
I mean, it's all over the place. I love St. John's. I love Houston. I can have a look right now. I'll tell you what my Final Four was.
Well, St. John's, that would be an incredible story. I think it was the first tournament since like 2019.
They look so good. And the fact that Rick Pitino can continue to get the best out of them. Okay, here's my Final Four. Michigan State, St. John's, Alabama, and Houston.
Okay, so only one, no Duke.
No Duke.
Is that just based off of Cooper's injury?
I don't think he is going to be as productive as they want.
Well, we'll have plenty of time over the next 3-4 weekends to talk about the 2025 NCAA tournament and the top prospects. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Once again, thank you for sticking with us through all 4 regions. Check out the Locked On newsletter, and don't forget to subscribe to the Locked On NBA Big Boy YouTube channel. Once again, it's Rafael and Krysten Peek, and we are out of here.